Hi, my name is Tomasz, and with me on stage today, Ron and Rok, who's going to help me drive the demos. Either you're a developer or a designer, the only thing you should care is to delight your users. And when you're building products to delight your users, you have to take care about the top of the experience. Today, if you would want to show something on a map, like a car or a listing, you don't have to build the entire map stack yourself. If you want to collect a credit card payment, you're not going to go and rebuild the entire payment stack, unless you're two Irish brothers, of course. And if you want to track your metrics, again, it doesn't make sense to rebuild the entire analytics stack. So why on earth do you have to rebuild an entire communication stack if you want to send a message from one of your users to the other user in your app? It's hard. I've done it in my previous company. You have to take care of several different, very, very hard problems, like authentication, security, synchronization across devices, offline messaging, and push. And this is all before you can even start worrying about scaling your infrastructure. Unless you are one of the big four, Google, Facebook, Microsoft, or Apple, you probably cannot hire the best people in the world, spend enough time, and scale your infrastructure globally to provide a great communication experience to your users. But here's the solution. Here comes Layer, a really easy way to add messaging, voice, and video to any mobile or web app. We are a team of experienced developers and designers that have built communication products before. I ran Vox.io, and Ron has been involved in Grand Central and OpenDNS. Today, I want to show you 3 demos that will clearly show you how easy it is to build on top of Layer. I'll start with messaging. Can you please switch to the Elmo? So the 2 phones on the left are mine, and the right phone is Ron's. So Ron is going to send me a message replying to what I sent him before, and you will see that the message is going to be delivered instantaneously. All the states are synced on the 2 devices on the right. But the device on the far left is offline. So Rok is going to bring it back online, and you will see that immediately when it gets connected, the state will get synced to that device as well, right? We can message back and forth, and that is easy. Notice the interactions Rok is using. Can we switch back to the slides, please? To achieve all this, we didn't have to write a whole lot of code. We basically needed code that fits on a slide to get all the features you just saw. So cross-device synchronization, sending from iOS to Android, and offline messaging, all with this much code. Can we switch back to the Elmo, please? Going to the second demo, I want to show you a high-quality peer-to-peer VoIP call. Rok starts the call. You can see the connection time is pretty fast. And you can notice that we have complete control over the UI experience. This is part of the Layer UI kit we're going to provide for free and fits nicely on top of the SDK. The quality, really high, comparable to any other great VoIP provider out there. Our chief scientist was the CTO of Grand Central and worked on Google Voice. Can we switch back to the slides, please? As everything Layer, it needs to be really simple. So adding calls to any mobile or web product out there should fit on one slide. This is the code you need to start the call and receive the call. The third demo I want to show you, please back to the Elmo, are contacts. Every single conversation you have is with someone else. It's probably convenient to find that someone else easier. And all our address books have duplicate entries, have misspelled names, and so on. So we thought it would be a nice addition to provide developers a tool to clean up those address books. And Rok is going to tap on the magic button. We're going to help you clean up that address book. And Chuck, as you saw, was a duplicate, is now one little compact contact. Can you switch back to the slides, please? Again, it fits on one slide. This is basically one line of code to clean all the messy address books out there. Layer has 2 components, the client-side part with the Layer UI kit to get you started really fast with the UI. There is no reason that you can just keep the Layer UI kit. You can build whatever experience you want on top of the SDK that makes sure that your users are authenticated correctly, connected through a secure connection, that sync works well, and that offline messages are handled like they should be. On the cloud side, we provide a whole set of cloud services, such as address book deduplication, message storage, message search, content extraction, spam filters, profanity filters, and many, many other services. You can connect your backends through the Layer Cloud API. Scalability is a big problem when you start growing, especially in the communication tool. So that's why we distributed Layer globally in a horizontal fashion, so you can scale really quickly through big numbers. In the old world, applications used to live in silos. With Layer, they can finally interconnect, very much like the phone system allowed anyone to call anyone. Layer is free to start, and because our unit economics are very different from the companies that are powered by the telco system, we can actually price per volume. So we can help you sail through your big launch curve and then up to a big scale with a good price. We are disrupting a huge industry. Telecommunications industry has been a $1 trillion industry for decades. And we are disrupting it with the help of all these apps. So there are over 850,000 apps in the Apple App Store. There are over 850,000 apps in the Android store. And we lost count when we were trying to figure out how many apps were there on the web. All those apps that touch two people on each side can benefit from integrating Layer. And 2 days ago, we started the early access program. And in less than 24 hours, we got over 1,000 signups and some great reactions from developers. So we are Layer. We are the open communications layer for the internet. And we are here to make all the human communication better. Thank you.
All right. Layer. Judges, anyone want to jump in?
I have a question.
Chris?
So one criticism of platform as a service companies like Twilio and Parse and these kinds of things is that, and maybe Heroku, is that as the customer gets larger, they have an incentive to build their own infrastructure, and therefore, or negotiate down the prices. Like, how do you think about that?
Yeah, I'll take this. So we kind of saw this with, I think the best example might have been GroupMe when they launched actually at a TechCrunch Disrupt hackathon. And as they scaled, they had really exorbitant SMS charges. One of the things that's sort of nice about being a totally IP-based platform is that we can help them scale to very large volumes and still be able to sort of spread the cost of that across a large number of developers. Since there's an implicit kind of network effect, we really want to make sure that anybody who starts on the platform is really incentivized to stay on the platform as they scale. So we think we've got a pricing model to let that happen.
Well, I think, because we'd met before, actually, a year ago, when you described this idea, and the thing which maybe people haven't quite cottoned onto is the point you made about it being an IP, that you built it from the ground up. Other companies like Twilio have built on the backs of existing communications infrastructure, which means they have a much higher cost to serve than you do, so you have a fundamental cost advantage.
Yeah, well, actually, Tamaj mentioned I was sort of involved in the starting of Grand Central, and we saw actually a lot of challenges with the conventional telephony system because literally for every 2 parties, there was actually 2 terminations, or origination and terminations. Being based on IP, we can scale very much like sort of Amazon Web Services and not have those implicit costs. And frankly, the other thing that's sort of interesting is just the experience can be so much better than sort of punching out to an SMS or to a phone call when that experience can be very much in-app.
In addition to that, all the calls, so all the media, the heavy traffic goes peer-to-peer when it can. So we estimated about 85% of the calls will never touch our infrastructure. And it means that the cost structure is much different, and the unit economics can support really large-scale applications.
How big is this market? And how do you think about how big the market is?
Your mic might be off, Mike.
Hello?
Okay. Yeah, so, well, the interesting thing, and we sort of touched on this, is the global telecommunications market has been huge for a long time. And fundamentally, and actually, it was interesting to hear Mark Zuckerberg talk about kind of how Facebook looks at it. There's going to be literally billions of people coming on the network, and they're not going to be using conventional telephony infrastructure. So we think that as Tamaj kind of pointed out, there's going to be hundreds of thousands of applications that could integrate this, some of which will achieve scale, and we'll be able to help them grow. Just like Amazon Web Services, we think that whether it's storage or search or some of the core services, that's going to be a very nice revenue opportunity. But ultimately, the market is to really help interconnect basically internet-connected devices.
I'm going to jump in real quick. Mike, you guys are invested in this, right?
Yeah, we're investors in. Is this on?
Yeah.
I think so.
I really hope it is because I love being the person talking. We're investors in Mark II Ventures, which is sort of the incubator that built this, and so we are investors in everything that they build automatically. So yeah, we are investors. I think it says that right there.
Yep. Why don't I call it out? Keith?
So this is pretty amazing, actually. It sounds very impressive. What do you think the number one or two things that go wrong? If something goes wrong in the next 3 years, what are the causes?
Okay. So first of all, when we are architecting this, we know that we need to be close to 100% uptime. Because if you imagine a world where we power tens and hundreds of thousands of apps, this world layer needs to be on constantly. So we're working really hard to prevent that. We're going deep into how the internet is actually wired to make sure that we sort of prevent that. The second thing is we should worry about scaling too fast. So working with smaller players, make sure that we got everything right before we really take the market is going to be important for us. So those two things, I would say, are most important.
And Keith, just to add to that, I think one of the things that we've had a tremendous experience with is part of the core team is from OpenDNS. And these guys have built globally scalable. One of the things I'm incredibly proud of the team, because I kind of helped start that company, is just in 7 years, OpenDNS has never gone down. And a lot of that core DNA is in the company. So I think the way we're going to mitigate is really just try to bring in people that really have experience, because you can imagine somebody who's created an amazing application that's scaling, they're chasing features and things to delight their users, right? They're not actually perhaps investing in the core operations, and that's something we really would like to be able to do on their behalf.
Thanks.
And do you think that's part of the reason why this hasn't been done before? Like, why do you think this idea seems so sensible?
So it's an extremely hard problem to do right. Many have tried, and probably your favorite apps. I don't know if you use, there are certain dating apps out there and even marketplaces and so on, and their messaging is just fine for the first message, but when you start really using them, you see that they don't even cover the basics. That's because they probably assigned a team of 3 people for 2 weeks to build the basic messaging, and they don't handle all the hardcore stuff that you need to spend 6 months, a year, 2 years building. And that's only messaging. Voice and video are completely different problems, and you need to have a dedicated team that works on those problems for a long time if you want to make it right.
That's great.
I was just going to offer that I think you're working on a really big problem, which is impressive, and it seems like the abstraction is at the right level in the stack. I think that just building a little bit on what Chris and Mike asked about, I think it's hard to build infrastructure when you don't have a client. And so, you might have an idea of a client, but when you don't have someone sitting there like saying, here's what we really need, this isn't working, this needs to scale differently. I think when you're looking at, I do think that some of these applications, when they get really big, need to own it because it's a core competency for them. So it seems to me that the sweet spot for your clients is really not so large that they need to break out on their own, but large enough that they can really help you shape the service. And I guess I am still wondering how big that market is. Can you give us some examples of types of companies that you could imagine, or specific examples of companies?
Yeah, well, so right now we're working with very closely with a set of companies, and what we've been surprised about, frankly, is companies that are very well-known name brands that people use all the time for various things are actually running into scaling issues right now. And they're chasing after other features because they're, as you said, they're a marketplace, or whether it's dating or some of these other things. And we really think we're able to handle that on their behalf. Originally, I thought that we would be very attractive to, say, like I could always imagine the guys that started Snapchat, say 2 years from now, they would build it, and hopefully we'd be able to hang with them as they scale. I really think that this core competency around scaling global infrastructure is not the same competency that people tend to think about when they're building incredibly engaging user experiences, and we see more and more that's what they're doing. So we think the market is quite large. Frankly, when you talk about hundreds of thousands of applications and globally scalable infrastructure, I think we have a pretty large market to chew on for the next couple of years at least, and as we grow, we'd like to think we could adapt as we grow.
If I can add to that just a little bit, a lot of the experiences that have communication in them are not fundamentally communication products. There is a, let's say, home sharing community out there, which is very large. It's also very valuable, but their core expertise is taking you from seeing a listing to actually staying at the listing, or even before that, sit, with a pack of friends, deciding which listing you're going to go to. And that is communication. But their core competencies take you from one end to the experiences to the other. And we can power the conversations in that experience and in other experiences.
Could you spend a little bit more time talking about your pricing? It wasn't clear to me whether you're charging on a per message basis or you're doing value-based pricing as a subscription.
Yeah, so we haven't nailed it down entirely, but one of the things we for sure want to do is a freemium model so people can get started.
Yeah, got that.
We are absolutely not going to price on a per message, per transaction basis, because we think that, like again, using the GroupMe example, we think that it just creates hard to predict pricing models for people that are going to use us. So we're kind of imagining bands that are fairly forgiving, but to start, we kind of think of it as a fraction of a single head count once they're in the sort of paid tier. And as they really scale, some of those services may be a la carte, like storage or search. But for the most part, we really, there's so much benefit to getting these applications on the platform and staying on the platform. And we also don't have unit costs of the telephony system. We think we can kind of balance that pretty nicely and still provide great value, make some decent revenue, and not force people off the platform.
Anyone else? I got a quick question. Ron, you mentioned Snapchat. Do you guys have any plans to introduce like temporal messaging? We saw Ansa earlier.
Yeah, so actually interesting. So ephemeral messaging is sort of part of the core protocol that we developed. If someone wants to send a message that can expire, that's actually one of the capabilities.
So I could build a Snapchat clone really easily.
Yeah, well, funny, we've had people talking about building Snapchat for lawyers so that there can be sort of off-the-record conversations instead of phone calls. I mean, all kinds of interesting different things are going to,
Insider trading.
Can I, if I
Yeah.
could, sorry, if you guys are done with the Snapchat, we have a couple of seconds there. The thing that, and I'm an investor, and so, I'm going to recuse myself from the voting on this, but the thing that we love about this, and I think SV who's also an investor, is the same thing, is we have a big portfolio of companies, and a lot of them are 5 to 15 person startups, and they're putting like half to sometimes even 1.5 people just on messaging. So you're talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars a year that they're spending on this, and those assets could sometimes be doing other things. And so it solves a big problem for our startups, depending on how much they charge for it.
And to add on that, the response we had for the first day was like over 1,000 developers actually signed up for the early access program, and we said we're only going to have 50 slots for that. But the emails we've been getting are just astonishing. I mean, even from people that already built this into their products, it's just like, guys, this is such a pain for us. Can we get access now? That's absolutely true.
So thank you very much. We really appreciate the opportunity to present to you guys.
You guys did a great job. That's Layer. Thank you guys.